I mean, I know you don't want to give away too much because you're doing this, unleashing this big thing with exposing David Icke, but he was in. I had no idea he was into channeling. That's very
Oh
interesting.
yeah, man. We got a book here. See if I can quote you something from it here. It's pretty intense. Let's see what he says here. Although there was a large amount of new and detailed information in this book, the basic found. Wait to see. Let's see here. What does he say? Since the publication of the Truth Vibrations, I have learned so much more. I have communicated almost daily with Rakorsky. Now, Rakorsky is a being that Alice Bailey came into our vernacular through Alice Bailey. I mean, he's communicating with Alice Bailey's ascended master every day here. The one I have communicated with almost daily is Rakorsky, the one known as the Lord of all civilization, who is directly responsible for the changes the earth will undergo. I also communicate often with the one we know as Jesus, the spirit of the earth, and many others. He says, communicating with such beings on other levels of creation is the most natural thing in the world. So yeah, he definitely was into channeling. But his what's coming out now is the connection to theosophy. How he has this out sort of thing that he does where like he looks back at this and he doesn't really talk about this anymore. He might even say, this was a time where my head was going crazy, and he just had his Kundalini experience, which is exactly what the Luciferic initiation, all this stuff. So he says, his mind had just been blown. He's crazy at this point. He doesn't really say that, but everything that he believes is the same. He still believes. I was listening in a very recent thing. He's talking about how this change, and if you've listened to a lot of this stuff, you've heard him say this kind of stuff. This change is actually going to be caused by the sun. He says the sun is going to put forth energies that are actually going to do the work of changing us. Now, he doesn't go into details anymore about that, what he means by that. But what he's talking about is the solar logos. Now, the solar logos is important to know because that's Lucifer, and he believes that the earth is a spirit in the same way that the sun is a spirit. It's a god. And I'll just read you something from here, Conspiracy Archive, who had done a really great thing on this. I was just doing. I'd seen he had started talking about solar logos and stuff like that. And I knew it was connected, but here's what it says. In part one of he's talking about the Lucius Trust logo, and it too features a stream of blue light, the New Age symbol invented by Foster Bailey. It has a plethora of symbolic imagery. The symbol, according to Lucius Trust, is a set of limitless field of blue, which signifies a spear. Let's see, what was I going to quote on this? The initiation, human and solar. Bailey mentions the five-pointed star as the final two initiations. It depends on him, merges in him. Let's see. I'm sorry, I can't find the quote I'm looking for here. But anyway, that's not where it ends. He talks about these. I mean, everything about it. Here's a chapter called "Living in the Light," where he talks about her. Every concept that he says in here. It's the most theosophical book you've ever read, and every tenet of theosophy is believed here, which he now believes still, but he just doesn't talk about it anymore. But the problem is like the only conclusion that you can come to here is that the beings that he's talking to were lying to him because first of all, a lot of these predictions didn't come true, but anyway, there's so much to say with this. My mind is just about to explode with David Icke information here, um, but the bottom line is this: that guy is here's a really I know it going all over the place with this, but this is really fascinating. So he actually says here he's talking every day with Rakorsky. Now Rakorsky is somebody that Alice Bailey goes into great detail describing this ascended master, and it's the exact same terminology. There's absolutely no doubt in the world that he's talking about Alice Bailey's ascended master Rakorsky. Um, but the issue is all of a sudden nowadays he starts to talk bad about the Theosophical Society and say, it's a setup, and he's quoting a guy named Brian Desborough. David Icke took everything, all his conspiracy stuff from a guy named Brian Desborough. It's kind of a mix between Brian Desborough and Bill Cooper. And The Biggest Secret, it's not his original conspiracy stuff. And I mean, it is word for word. He like took everything from Desborough and just sort of, and you can actually go. I mean, the book's dedicated to him. He's not necessarily stealing it or whatever. But here's the thing: Brian Desborough has this big thing against the Theosophical Society and says it's obviously trying to trick the New Age into accepting a new world order, and that these ascended masters were created by the I think he says the Tavistock Institute, and these names were just code names for people at the Tavistock, and all this view that Brian Desborough has. Which Brian Desborough has a bunch of crazy views, including the whole reptilians thing, and they chased the Aryans from Mars to the moon. All that stuff is Brian Desborough. Every bit of it. In fact, Brian Desborough introduced Arizona Wilder to David Icke, and Brian Desborough's early writings clearly show he knows way too much about mind control, and it's clear that something happened with Arizona's testimony, because when she actually says, "I was made to learn," and then she says, the reptilians came from Mars and they were chased the Aryans to the moon, and that's her whole story of what the reptilians are. She clearly got it from Brian Desborough. It's a mess. That whole thing is a total mess. But nevertheless, what's weird about it is Ike never seems to realize, as he took on this new belief, and he says this in new presentations about how I believe the New Age is, doesn't have it all right, and he badmouths the Ascended Masters. He like puts a little thing of the Ascended Masters on the screen and talks bad about it. And he's basically just saying Brian Desborough stuff that he got from The Biggest Secret. But the issue is he doesn't seem to have made the connection that everything that he believes comes from them. I mean, everything, he's bad-mouthing the Ascended Masters. But, I mean, these first two books and detail his worldview, which is, by the way, the craziest thing in the world. I mean, if you read these books are about, like, how the world came into being and what the world's all about. This is crazy stuff. This book here called Love Changes Everything. But nevertheless, he clearly still believes this stuff. So it's weird. It's just weird. He's an interesting character. I'll leave it there because I'm just rambling. I got so much to say about it.
No, I can tell you. This is interesting. And as far as Chris, like if people, automatically when people hear if you're being critical of someone, they think, oh, you're just trying to bash them. And I want to just say up front, the first big conspiracy book I ever got was David Icke. David Icke played a huge part in me getting involved in all this. That was back in, I think, 2002, around there. I got Children of the Matrix, and I mean, but when you really are genuinely seeking truth, and you're not just seeking information that reaffirms things you already believe, I mean, sometimes people that you used to look up to and their ideas, sometimes evidence comes out that people aren't always what they seem, and that's just something I've kind of learned to deal with. Always expect the unexpected, and then. I mean, when I first started out, I mean, it's just amazing how much, people can change. I started out as basically an agnostic. I held some of these kind of more, quote, new age ideas, but then things just, they'll come to you. It's just amazing. Like trust me, I did not, the things I believe now kind of came to me through, things with other people's research, like Chris White, and, the documentary Aquarius Age of Evil, and then also just reading the documents of like the Theosophical Society. So my point is, I mean, if you really want truth, you can't just, say, well, I'm not going to believe what he says about David Icke because I like David Icke. I mean, I think Chris White does a good job of presenting evidence of, why he's criticizing the ideas of these people. And I've never heard you stoop to real low personal attacks. I know you don't hear you say, oh, he's just loony. You don't do the shallow saying, oh, David Icke is just crazy because he talks about reptilians, but no, you do a good job of backing up, their ideas more so than the person themselves, which I think is key if you want, to, just be held to a higher standard and not just get into mudslinging, basically.
Right. That's important to realize. As far as I know, I sometimes we'll get that, that there's an infighting thing going on. We need to be we need to be worried about the overall thing that's going on, and all this stuff. And I would say that if I'm right, then we're all chasing the wrong thing. If I'm right, then the real New World Order is winning and we are losing. If I'm right, then we are all getting sucked into it, and we don't really understand what they are wanting to do with getting everybody to believe that an evolution is coming. We haven't pieced that together. We've never even considered that what that agenda could look like, or why would they would be pushing it. So I'm trying to use everybody's it's a vehicle in which to get to people to hopefully wake them up. If I suppose that's what it is. But another thing about it is that, you say that, and I too first got into the conspiracy stuff through David Icke. That's where, I mean, if it wasn't for David Icke, there's a whole bunch of conspiracies that I wouldn't have known about. Learned about all the stuff there, aspartame, fluoride, you name it. He taught it to me in The Biggest Secret. And but the issue is that it's kind of like, if somebody gives you some truth, here's a good example. The Jehovah's Witnesses, great example. The Jehovah's Witnesses will like tell you stuff like, "Hey, Easter is a pagan holiday," and you're like, "Oh no, it's not. Easter couldn't be a pagan holiday." And then they prove it to you, and you're like, "Wow, man, Easter's really a pagan holiday. That's crazy. That makes sense. It's Ishtar, and you got the fertility ritual, and you got the bunny rabbits and the eggs. It all makes sense." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, it is. So we've got all the truth. Come over here and join us." And they just used it as bait. It's like the oldest psychological trick in the world. And if we think that our enemy is not that, at least that smart, to use some sort of bait. I mean, there's not a cult in the world that doesn't have some truth. I mean, nobody would join a cult that doesn't have any truth. So, it's just basic psychology that we need to be, especially defended against that stuff, which um, is, the more unique the truth is. And that's why the conspiracy thing is so dangerous, because it's so unique and important what you find out when you find out that the world is not true. And actually, I got a really great video quote of David Icke talking about this same principle, which is interesting because obviously he's utilizing it. But that it is sort of a shattered paradigm thing that they have to rebuild, because when you have your world, you know, shaken like that, you have to rebuild it. And the problem is that we're vulnerable and during that rebuilding process, and our enemy is really aware of that.
Wow, that's a great point. Yeah, that's actually, and saying that, like, how it shakes your worldview. That's exactly how it was for me when I quote woke up. And I mean, yeah, it's because it basically makes you feel like everything you're taught, was a lie, which is not, which is fairly true. I mean, sure, like you said, there are some truths in the mainstream establishment, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, a lot of what we learn is a lie. So then, if they can do that, I mean, this does seem like, like a form of mind control in itself, tear you down and then bring you back up into, their philosophy. So if there really is an Illuminati that's working towards very nefarious ends, why wouldn't they have, people, just totally tear down your establishment worldview and then bring it back up and to be in line with what they want, the externalization of the higher.
Exactly. That's what brainwashing is. I mean, that's where the term came from. It was the idea of clearing out a brain so that it could be reprogrammed. And we are in such danger if we think that conspiracy knowledge is the proof that somebody's okay. Or and we also have to be understanding of even that they might even have the best possible conspiracy knowledge to make sure they have the best possible audience. And who would have more knowledge of the conspiracy stuff than the entities driving it in the first place? Why? I mean, if you look at Brian Desborough, the people, where he gets his conspiracy knowledge, I mean, that guy says right out the bat, he's getting all his information from spiritual entities that he talks with every day, or go, even further, and on down the line. I mean, as I said, Jordan Maxwell or have I said before anyway, Jordan Maxwell and all these guys, they claim, Maxwell claims Pleiadians, are the ones guiding him and speaking through him. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean that's a good point. That if you do have all this conspiracy knowledge, it would make sense to be getting it from the conspirators. But I mean, so as far as these people, though, I mean, actually pushing this conspiracy, the Theosophical Society, and the real New World Order that they talk about. I mean, do you think I mean, I don't know if you have a real direct answer for this or if you know, but in your gut, do you think they are actual agents? They're deceived? Like they don't. You kind of hit on this a little in the Age of Aquarius, but I mean, now that it's been some time since that came out, and now with exposing Ike, do you think this is all part of a grander conspiracy, or do you think they really think that what this coming new Age of Aquarius is? Do you think they really think it is a good thing, and they really are doing it for the betterment of humanity, and they're just deceived, though?
I think of the majority of these guys are deceived. And I think that if you were having supernatural experiences like exactly what the, Lucifer initiation, all this stuff. So he says, his mind had just been blown. He's crazy at this point. He doesn't really say that, but everything that he believes is the same. He still believes. I was listening in a very recent thing. He's talking about how this change, and if you've listened to a lot of this stuff, you've heard him say this kind of stuff. This change is actually going to be caused by the sun.
Yeah, I mean, I know you don't want to give away too much because you're doing this, unleashing this big thing with exposing David Icke, but he was in. I had no idea he was into channeling. That's very
Oh
interesting.
yeah, man. We got a book here. See if I can quote you something from it here. It's pretty intense. Let's see what he says here. Although there was a large amount of new and detailed information in this book, the basic found. Wait to see. Let's see here. What does he say? Since the publication of the Truth Vibrations, I have learned so much more. I have communicated almost daily with Rakorsky. Now, Rakorsky is a being that Alice Bailey came into our vernacular through Alice Bailey. I mean, he's communicating with Alice Bailey's ascended master every day here. The one I have communicated with almost daily is Rakorsky, the one known as the Lord of all civilization, who is directly responsible for the changes the earth will undergo. I also communicate often with the one we know as Jesus, the spirit of the earth, and many others. He says, communicating with such beings on other levels of creation is the most natural thing in the world. So yeah, he definitely was into channeling. But what's coming out now is the connection to theosophy, how he has this out sort of thing that he does where like he looks back at this and he doesn't really talk about this anymore. He might even say, this was a time where my head was going crazy, and he just had his, well, Kundalini experience, which is